The metal corridors of Epsilon 7 space station stretched endlessly in every direction. Kite Park walked slowly through the pristine hallways, his worn boots making soft sounds against the polished floor. Each step sent a dull ache through his left leg where old shrapnel still lived beneath the skin. His walking stick clicked rhythmically as he moved forward. The old man looked out of place among the sleek walls and bright lights. His gray hair was cut military short, and deep lines marked his weathered face. Scars crossed his neck and disappeared under his simple Earth uniform. At 67, Kite had seen more battles than most soldiers would in 3 lifetimes. Beside him walked Hyejin Choi, a diplomatic attaché from Earth's embassy. She was in her 30s with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Her crisp blue uniform bore the symbols of the Terran Diplomatic Corps. She had been assigned to escort Kite through his visit to the Galactic Defense Academy. "The academy is quite impressive," Hyejin said, trying to make conversation. "They train cadets from over 40 different species here." Kite nodded, but said nothing. His old eyes took in every detail of their surroundings. Exit routes, security, cameras, the way the alien guards held their weapons. Old habits never died. They passed groups of young alien beings in training uniforms. Most were tall and graceful with silver skin that seemed to glow under the station's lights. These were Luminari cadets, members of one of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. Their large silver eyes followed Kite as he walked by. Some of the cadets whispered to each other in their musical language. Kite caught a few words he understood. Human. Old. Primitive. He had heard worse. "They are curious about you," Hyejin said quietly. "Humans are still new to the galactic community. Many of them have never seen one of our veterans before." "I bet they haven't," Kite replied in his gravelly voice. They walked past training rooms where young aliens practiced with energy weapons and flight simulators. Everything was clean and perfect, like a medical facility. Kite remembered muddy trenches and broken equipment held together with tape and prayers. These kids had never known real war. The corridor opened into a vast central hub. Beings from dozens of species moved about their business. Some floated rather than walked. Others had multiple arms or eyes that saw in spectrums humans could not imagine. But they all shared one thing. They looked at Kite with barely hidden curiosity and something that might have been pity. "The weapons testing range is just ahead," Hyejin said. "Are you sure you want to do this? You could just observe." Kite stopped walking and looked at her. His brown eyes held depths that spoke of things seen and done in the dark spaces between stars. "I didn't come all this way to sit in the stands," he said simply. They entered the testing range through massive doors that slid open with a soft hiss. The room beyond was enormous, with high ceilings and walls that seemed to absorb sound. At one end was a complex obstacle course filled with barriers, ramps, and platforms. Holographic projectors lined the walls, ready to create targets and scenarios. Crowd had already gathered. Alien instructors in formal robes stood with their students. Some held electronic tablets, ready to record whatever was about to happen. Kite noticed the way they looked at him, like scientists studying an interesting but outdated specimen. At the center of the group stood a tall luminary in elaborate robes. His silver skin had an almost mirror-like quality, and his large eyes seemed to take in everything at once. When he smiled, it was the kind of expression that never reached his eyes. "Ah, our honored guest arrives," the instructor said in perfect but accented English. "I am Veltar, Master of Weapons Instruction. Welcome to our humble academy." The way he said humble made it clear he thought the place was anything but. Kite nodded politely. "Honored to be here. We have prepared a small demonstration of our latest weapons technology," Veltar continued. "Perhaps you would be interested in observing luminary precision and craftsmanship." More beings entered the range. Kite spotted a few other humans among the crowd, military observers and diplomatic staff. They looked nervous, as if they knew this was some kind of test. Veltar gestured to a display case at the side of the range. Inside was a weapon unlike anything Kite had seen before. It was sleek and elegant, with crystalline components that pulsed with inner light. Energy conduits ran along its length like veins of liquid starlight. The X9 Stellar Devastator, Veltar announced proudly. The most advanced plasma rifle in the known galaxy. It requires perfect neural synchronization between user and weapon. The slightest mistake in technique can cause catastrophic feedback. Several alien cadets nodded appreciatively. This was clearly technology beyond human understanding. The weapon's targeting computer can calculate trajectories across 17 different variables simultaneously, Veltar continued. It compensates for atmospheric density, gravitational fields, target velocity, and acceleration patterns. Truly, it represents the pinnacle of luminary engineering. Kite studied the weapon through the display case. It was beautiful, he had to admit. But beauty and function were not always the same thing. He had known soldiers who polished their rifles until they gleamed, then died because they forgot to clean the firing mechanism. Would our human guest like a closer look? Veltar asked. His smile seemed to grow wider. Kite limped forward, his walking stick clicking against the floor. He bent down to examine the weapon more closely. The aliens watched his every movement, some taking notes on their tablets. Up close, Kite could see how the weapon was built. The grip was sized for luminary hands, which were longer and more slender than human ones. The trigger mechanism was positioned for their different finger joints. The sights were calibrated for eyes that saw different wavelengths of light. It was a weapon designed by aliens, for aliens. Any human trying to use it would be at a severe disadvantage. That was exactly what they were counting on. Fascinating, Kite said, straightening up slowly. His old back protested, but he kept his expression neutral. Indeed, Veltar agreed. Perhaps you would like to see it in action? We could arrange a small demonstration. The crowd grew quiet. This was what they had all come to see. The primitive human trying to use advanced alien technology. It would be educational for the cadets to see the limitations of less evolved species. Ye Jin stepped closer to Kite. You don't have to do anything you're not comfortable with, she whispered. Kite looked around the range one more time. He saw the expectant faces, the recording devices, the subtle smirks. These beings thought they had him figured out. An old soldier, past his prime trying to keep up with superior alien science. They had no idea what they were about to learn about humans. I'd be happy to give it a try, Kite said calmly. Veltar's smile reached its widest point yet. Excellent. Let us begin. Veltar moved to the weapon display with practiced grace. His long fingers danced over a control panel, and the case opened with a soft hiss. The X9 Stellar Devastator rose on a pedestal, its crystalline components catching the light like captured stars. Before we begin, Veltar announced to the gathered crowd, let me explain the testing protocol. The target system will generate holographic enemy drones. These drones follow advanced combat patterns based on actual battlefield data from 17 different conflicts. The alien instructor touched another control, and the range came alive. Holographic barriers appeared throughout the obstacle course. Ramps and platforms materialized from the floor. The far end of the range now looked like a war zone. The drones will move at combat speed through this environment, Veltar continued. They will use cover, evasive maneuvers, and coordinated attacks. The standard test consists of 25 targets appearing over a 3-minute period. Kite watched as several small holographic drones flickered into existence at the far end of the range. They darted between obstacles with incredible speed, their movements erratic and unpredictable. Even standing still, they were difficult to track with the naked eye. Our best cadets typically achieve 60 to 70% accuracy on their first attempt, Veltar said. After months of training, our top students can reach 85%. A young luminary cadet stepped forward from the group. She was tall and slender, like all her species, with silver skin that seemed to glow from within. Her large eyes held confidence that came from years of training. This is Diane Kim, Veltar said. One of our most promising students. She holds the current academy record for plasma weapons accuracy. Diane bowed politely to the crowd, then to Kite. "It would be an honor to demonstrate proper technique for our human guest," she said in careful English. She approached the weapon with reverence, her movements fluid and precise. When she lifted the X9, it seemed to become part of her. The weapon's crystal components pulsed brighter as it synced with her nervous system through biosensors in the grip. "Neural link established," announced a computer voice. "Weapon ready for combat protocols." Diane raised the rifle to her shoulder with perfect form. Her stance was textbook luminary combat doctrine: balanced, stable, economical. She sighted, down the weapon's length, her large eyes calculating distances and angles with computer-like precision. The test began. Drones materialized at the far end of the range and immediately scattered in all directions. They moved like angry insects, diving behind cover and popping up in unexpected places. Their holographic forms flickered and shifted, making them even harder to target. Dayun took her time with the first shot. She tracked a drone as it wove, between obstacles, leading it perfectly as it emerged from behind a barrier. The plasma bolt caught its center mass, and the hologram dissolved in a shower of light. The crowd murmured appreciatively. It had been a difficult shot, requiring perfect timing and prediction of the target's movement. Dayun continued methodically. Each shot was carefully aimed, precisely timed. She never wasted energy or ammunition. Her technique was flawless, a perfect example of luminary military doctrine. Patience, precision, and calculated aggression. She hit targets hiding behind cover by bouncing shots off angled surfaces. She led fast-moving drones with mathematical accuracy. When multiple targets appeared simultaneously, she prioritized them, based on threat assessment algorithms built into her training. The 3 minutes passed quickly. When the test ended, the range fell silent except for the soft hum of cooling plasma conduits. "Final score," the computer announced. 18 targets eliminated out of 25 possible. Accuracy rating, 72%. The alien cadets burst into appreciative sounds. Several touched their foreheads in what Kite recognized as a gesture of respect among their species. Dayun had performed excellently, especially considering the pressure of demonstrating for a crowd. "Outstanding work," Veltar said, his smile genuine for the first time since Kite had arrived. "Dayun continues to exceed our expectations." The young cadet bowed again and carefully returned the weapon to its stand. The crystal components dimmed as the neural link disconnected. "Now then," Veltar said, turning to Kite with his artificial smile restored. "Perhaps our human guest would like to attempt the same challenge?" The crowd grew quiet again. All eyes turned to the old Earth, soldier standing at the edge of the range. Some of the aliens leaned forward slightly, eager to see how primitive human reflexes would compare to advanced luminary precision. Hyejin moved closer to Kite. "You really don't have to do this," she whispered urgently. "That weapon is designed for their physiology. The neural interface might not even work with human brain patterns." Kite looked at her with those deep brown eyes that had seen too much. "It'll work," he said quietly. "How can you be sure?" "Because they wouldn't have invited me here just to watch," Kite replied. "This whole thing is a setup. They want to see the old human fail in front of their students." Junwoo Nam, a young human military observer in the crowd, shifted nervously. He had heard stories about Kite's legendary service record during the Titan campaign, but that had been decades ago. The man standing before them now looked like someone's grandfather, not a warrior. "Very well," Kite said louder, addressing Veltar directly. "I'll give it a try." The alien instructor's smile grew wider. "Excellent. Please take your time. The weapon interface can be quite complex for those unfamiliar with luminary technology." Kite nodded and began walking toward the weapon stand. His limp seemed more pronounced under the scrutiny of dozens of alien eyes. The walking stick clicked against the floor with each step, the sound echoing in the quiet range. He stopped in front of the X9 Stellar Devastator and studied it for a long moment. The weapon was beautiful. There was no denying that. Every line spoke of advanced engineering and centuries of refinement. It represented the pinnacle of an entire civilization's approach to warfare. But Kite had learned long ago that the most advanced weapon was useless in the wrong hands, and sometimes the simplest solution was the most effective one. He reached out with one gnarled hand and touched the weapon's grip. The crystal components immediately began to pulse with renewed energy. Neural link attempting to establish. The computer announced. Warning. Non-luminary physiology detected. Synchronization may be incomplete. Kite lifted the weapon from its stand. It was heavier than it looked, and the balance was all wrong for human hands. But he had handled worse. Shall we begin? Veltar asked, his voice barely containing his anticipation. Kite held the X9 Stellar Devastator in his weathered hands, feeling its alien weight and balance. The weapon hummed softly as its biosensors tried to sync with his human nervous system. Warning lights flickered on the display, indicating incomplete neural compatibility. To the watching aliens, he looked confused and overwhelmed. His movements seemed uncertain as he adjusted his grip on the unfamiliar weapon. Several Luminari cadets exchanged glances, their expressions mixing pity with academic curiosity. But inside Kite's mind, a different process was taking place. 30 years of combat experience kicked into high gear as he analyzed everything about the weapon in his hands. The grip angle was wrong for human anatomy, designed for the longer, more slender luminary fingers. But Kite had handled captured enemy weapons before. He shifted his hands slightly, finding a position that worked with his shorter fingers while maintaining control. The weapon's weight distribution put most of its mass toward the rear, making it muzzle-light. That would affect how it moved during rapid target acquisition. Kite made a mental note to compensate by using more wrist motion and less arm swing. The sighting system projected a holographic reticle that flickered and jumped as the weapon's targeting computer struggled to interface with his brain. Kite ignored it completely. He had learned to shoot long before smart weapons existed. His eyes, hands, and instincts would have to be enough. Having difficulties with the interface? Veltar asked with false concern. The weapons systems are quite sophisticated. Perhaps the neural patterns are too complex for human cognitive processing. A few of the alien cadets chuckled softly at their instructor's comment. Kite seemed not to hear them. He was lost in his own world, running through decades of muscle memory and battlefield wisdom. The plasma charging system had a distinct whine that changed pitch as energy levels fluctuated. Kite listened carefully, learning the weapon's rhythm. Every gun had its own personality, its own quirks and preferences. This one was no different, despite its alien origin. He noticed something the luminary designers had probably never considered. The weapon's harmonic frequency created a tiny vibration in the stock that reached its peak just before each shot. For someone sensitive to such things, it was like having an extra sense that told him exactly when the weapon was ready to fire. Minho Lee, a tactical analyst from Earth's military, watched from the crowd with growing interest. He had studied Kite's service record before this demonstration. The man had earned every medal the Terran Marine Corps could give, most of them for actions that officially never happened. The targeting computer appears to be malfunctioning, Da-Un observed quietly. Perhaps a human cannot achieve proper synchronization. Perhaps, Veltar agreed, his smile growing broader. Shall we begin the test anyway? For educational purposes, of course. Kite finally looked up from the weapon. His brown eyes had changed somehow, gaining a focus and intensity that made several aliens step back unconsciously. I'm ready, he said simply. The range systems activated with a soft chime. Holographic barriers and obstacles materialized throughout, the course creating a complex three-dimensional battlefield. At the far end, the first wave of enemy drones flickered into existence. Kite raised the weapon to his shoulder, and something remarkable happened. The tremor in his hands disappeared completely. His breathing became deep and regular. The slight stoop in his shoulders straightened as decades of training took over. The walking stick clattered to the floor, forgotten. To the watching aliens, it was like seeing a different person entirely. The frail old human had been replaced by something else, something dangerous and competent in a way they had not expected. The first drone darted out from behind cover, moving in an erratic pattern designed to confuse targeting computers. Kite tracked it smoothly, not with his eyes but with something deeper. Some instinct honed in the crucible of real combat. He squeezed the trigger. The plasma bolt caught the drone center mass, dissolving it in a brilliant flash of light. The shot had been fired without using the targeting computer, without waiting for the neural interface to stabilize, without any of the technological aids that Luminary doctrine considered essential. Pure instinct and experience. The crowd stirred, uneasily. That had been a difficult shot, especially for someone unfamiliar with the weapon's characteristics. But perhaps it was just luck. Kite was already tracking the second target. His movements were fluid now, economical and precise. He fired again and another drone vanished. Then another, but he was just getting started. The fourth drone tried to use cover, ducking behind a holographic barrier and popping up in a different location. Kite anticipated its movement and fired where it was going to be, not where it was. The plasma bolt was waiting when the drone emerged. "Impossible," whispered one of the Luminary instructors. "He is not using the targeting system at all." Veltar's smile was beginning to fade. This was not how the demonstration was supposed to go. The human should be struggling with the unfamiliar technology, missing most of his shots while the alien students learned about the limitations of primitive species. Instead, Kite was methodically destroying every target that appeared. The fifth drone tried a complex, evasive maneuver, spinning and weaving through the obstacles in a pattern designed to break tracking locks. Kite followed it effortlessly, his body moving with the weapon as if they were connected by something stronger than any neural interface. When he fired, the drone ceased to exist. Heejin found herself holding her breath as she watched. She had read Kite's classified service files. She knew about the battles on Titan, the desperate last stands on worlds whose names were still classified. But knowing about something and seeing it were very different things. The sixth and seventh drones appeared simultaneously, trying to divide his attention. Kite engaged the closer threat first, then transitioned to the second target so quickly that the watching aliens could barely follow his movements. 2 more flashes of plasma, 2 more destroyed drones. "He moves like the weapon was made for him," Da-Un said quietly, her voice filled with something that might have been awe. Kite was no longer thinking consciously about his actions. He had entered that state of perfect focus that comes only to those who have survived countless life-or-death situations. His conscious mind stepped back and let deeper instincts take control. The 8th drone tried to hide behind multiple layers of cover, using the holographic environment's complexity to break line of sight. Kite solved the problem by bouncing his plasma bolt off a reflective surface, hitting the target from an angle no Luminary doctrine would have considered. By the time the first minute ended, 12 drones had been destroyed. The alien spectators had fallen completely silent. The second minute of the test began with a complex pattern of targets appearing and disappearing rapidly. The drones moved faster now, their artificial intelligence adapting to Kite's shooting style and trying to counter it. It did not matter. Kite had fought thinking machines before, during the automated defense conflicts in the Outer Rim. He knew their weakness. They followed patterns, even when trying to be unpredictable. And patterns could be broken. 3 drones emerged from different positions simultaneously, each following a different vector designed to overwhelm a single shooter. Kite's response defied everything the aliens knew about weapons handling. He fired while moving, something Luminary doctrine considered nearly impossible with plasma weapons due to their sensitive calibration requirements. His first shot took out the leftmost target, while he was already spinning toward the second. His second shot destroyed the center drone while he was still in motion. The third drone, expecting him to complete his turn, had positioned itself accordingly. Instead, Kite dropped to one knee and fired between his own legs, catching the target, completely off guard. 3 plasma flashes, 3 destroyed drones, total time elapsed 4 seconds. "By the light of the home star," breathed one of the Luminary instructors. "How is he compensating for the weapon's plasma drift while in motion?" "He is not compensating," replied another, his voice filled with confusion. "He is somehow predicting it." Kite rose smoothly to his feet and continued firing. Each shot was different from the last. Different angles, different techniques, different applications of the same basic principles. Where Luminari training emphasized standardization and repeatable procedures, Kitai improvised constantly. He fired from positions no alien would attempt, crouched behind cover, leaning around corners, even lying flat on his back when a drone tried to attack from above. Each time he adapted his technique to the situation rather than forcing the situation to match his technique. So-Young Park, a xenopsychology professor studying human behavior, frantically scribbled notes on her tablet. She was witnessing something that challenged every assumption about human cognitive limitations. Subject demonstrates extraordinary adaptability, she muttered to herself. Neural pathways appear to be forming new connections in real time. This level of situational learning should not be possible for any known species. Kite fired at a drone hiding behind a barrier, but this time his shot deliberately missed. The plasma bolt struck the barrier's edge and ricocheted at a precise angle, hitting a second drone that had been concealed behind different cover entirely. One shot. 2 targets destroyed. The crowd of alien spectators stirred uneasily. They were seeing things that should not be possible, even with their advanced technology. The human was using their own weapon better than they could, despite having never seen it before today. Veltar's artificial smile had completely disappeared. His large silver eyes were wide with something approaching alarm. This demonstration was supposed to showcase Luminari superiority, not human capabilities. Perhaps we should stop the test, he said quietly to his assistants. The weapon may be malfunctioning. All systems show normal operation, replied the technician monitoring the equipment. The human appears to be overperforming specifications. The 15th drone attempted a coordinated attack with the 16th, both targets moving in precise synchronization to create overlapping fields of fire. Kite's response was to create his own crossfire, bouncing plasma bolts off multiple surfaces to converge on both targets simultaneously from unexpected angles. The math involved should have required computer assistance. Kite did it by instinct. Junwoo Nam, the young human military observer, found himself grinning despite the tension in the room. He had grown up hearing stories about the legendary Marines who had held the line during humanity's darkest hours. Now he was seeing one of them in action. "Sir," he whispered to Minho Lee, "are you recording this?" "Every second," Minho replied, his tactical analyst mind already calculating the implications. "The Galactic Council is going to want to see this." Kite continued his systematic destruction of the holographic enemies. The 18th drone tried to use the weapon's own plasma discharge against him, timing its movement to coincide with the brief flash that accompanied each shot. Kite simply fired with his eyes closed, relying on sound and instinct to guide his aim. The drone died anyway. By now, the alien spectators were completely silent. Even the instructors had stopped taking notes, too mesmerized by what they were witnessing to maintain their scientific detachment. The 19th and 20th drones appeared together, but they were different somehow. Larger, more complex, with defensive systems that had not been present in the earlier targets. "Advanced combat drones," Dayan whispered. "Those are not part of the standard test protocol." Veltar's expression had gone from confidence to concern, to something approaching fear. The weapon's targeting computer was trying to provide assistance, projecting probability clouds and trajectory calculations, but Kite ignored all of it. Instead, he did something no luminary would have considered possible. He overrode the weapon's safety protocols. The X-9 Stellar Devastator had multiple safeguards built into its systems to prevent catastrophic overloads. Plasma weapons were dangerous enough when operating within normal parameters, but Kite had noticed something during his initial examination of the weapon. The safety systems were designed to prevent accidents, not to stop someone who knew exactly what they were doing. He adjusted his grip slightly, finding contact points that bypassed the primary limiters. The weapon's crystal components flared brighter as more energy flowed through them than the designers had ever intended. "Warning," announced the range's computer system. "Weapon discharge exceeding safe parameters. Recommend immediate cessation of firing." Kite fired anyway. The plasma bolt that emerged from the X-9 was not the controlled burst of energy that Luminary doctrine prescribed. It was a lance of pure destruction that turned the 19th drone into vapor and kept going, punching through 2 barriers before finally dissipating. The 20th drone lasted exactly 1 second longer before meeting the same fate. As the final minute of the test began, something had changed in the weapon itself. The constant energy discharge had heated its components beyond normal operating temperatures. Warning lights flashed along its length, and a high-pitched whine indicated stress in the plasma containment system. Any sane person would have stopped firing and allowed the weapon to cool down. Kite was far beyond such concerns. He had entered a state that Marines called the zone, that perfect fusion of training, experience, and controlled aggression where conscious thought becomes irrelevant and deeper instincts take control. The final 5 drones appeared in rapid succession, each one more complex than the last. They moved faster, used better tactics, and possessed defensive systems that should have made them nearly invulnerable to small arms fire. Kite destroyed them all in less than 30 seconds. When the test ended, the range fell silent except for the ominous crackling sound coming from the overheated plasma rifle in his hands. The X-9 Stellar Devastator trembled in Kite's hands like a living thing in pain. Its crystal components glowed white-hot, and the metal housing was almost too warm to touch. Warning alarms shrieked from multiple systems as the weapon operated, far beyond its designed limits. "Human Kite," Veltar called out, his voice tight with concern. "You must cease firing immediately. The weapon is approaching critical overload. The plasma containment system cannot handle this level of sustained discharge." Kite heard the words, but they seemed to come from very far away. He was still locked in that perfect state of combat, awareness where time moved differently and every sensation was crystal clear. The weapon's distress signals were just another input to process, no more important than wind direction or target movement. The test was officially over, but new targets continued to appear. The range's computer system, confused by the unprecedented performance, had switched to emergency protocols designed to challenge even the most advanced alien warriors. These were not training drones anymore. They were full combat simulations based on real enemies from actual battlefields across the galaxy. Each hologram possessed the speed, cunning, and lethality of creatures that had killed thousands of galactic soldiers. Kite faced them all without hesitation. The first advanced combat simulation materialized as a void-born hunter, a nightmare creature from the galaxy's darkest conflicts. It moved like liquid shadow, phasing in and out of visibility as it darted between obstacles. Its simulated claws could tear through starship armor. Kite tracked it with movements so fluid they seemed choreographed. When the creature lunged, he was already firing at the space it would occupy. The overcharged plasma bolt caught it mid-leap and erased it from existence. "Impossible," breathed Dayun. "Void-born hunters require coordinated fire from multiple heavy weapons. A single rifle cannot generate enough energy to penetrate their defenses." "That rifle can now," Minho Lee observed grimly. "He is pushing." It passed every safety limit. The weapon's housing began to smoke. Cooling vents along its sides glowed cherry red as they struggled to dissipate the enormous heat buildup. The biosensors that interfaced with Kite's nervous system flickered and sparked, their delicate circuits overwhelmed by feedback from his heightened state of awareness. 3 more targets appeared simultaneously. Harvester combat drones that had terrorized the outer colonies during the machine wars. Their adaptive shielding could deflect most energy weapons, and their tactical programming was based on captured galactic military databases. Kite's response was to stop thinking like a soldier and start thinking like a survivor. He fired his first shot directly at the floor, creating a cloud of superheated debris that disrupted the drone's sensors. While they were momentarily blinded, he ricocheted 2 more shots off the range's metallic ceiling, coming at them from angles their programming had not anticipated. All 3 drones fell in less than 5 seconds. "He is rewriting combat doctrine in real time," So-Young Park whispered, her professional composure completely forgotten. "This individual is demonstrating tactical innovation beyond any recorded parameters." The crowd of alien spectators had backed away from the firing line. Some were recording everything with their personal devices, while others simply stared in stunned silence. This had stopped being a demonstration of weapon capabilities and become something else entirely, a glimpse into the kind of warrior that humanity could produce when pressed to its limits. Veltar made a desperate gesture to his technicians. "Shut down the target system. End the simulation now." "Sir, we cannot," came the reply. "The human has somehow interfaced directly with our combat protocols. The system thinks it is under actual attack." Kaite continued firing, each shot now producing visible distortions in the air around the weapon's muzzle. The plasma chamber was operating at temperatures that should have caused catastrophic failure minutes ago, but somehow, the ancient rifle continued to function. A new target appeared that made several aliens cry out in recognition. It was a warform ascendant, a legendary creature from the Transcendence conflicts that had single-handedly destroyed entire battle fleets. No conventional weapon could even damage its defenses. Kite studied the hologram for exactly 1 second, then did something that violated every principle of energy weapon design. He reverse-cycled the plasma chamber. Instead of building up energy for discharge, he forced the containment field to collapse in a controlled manner, creating a brief but incredibly intense burst of raw plasma that existed for only microseconds. The warform ascendant, designed to deflect sustained energy attacks, had no defense against a weapon that technically exploded every time it fired. The creature died instantly, but the technique came at a cost. The X9 Stellar Devastator was now glowing like a small sun. Its internal components pushed so far beyond their limits that the laws of physics seemed negotiable. Steam rose from its surface as moisture in the air vaporized on contact. "Everyone, back!" shouted Junwoo Nam, recognizing the signs of imminent weapon failure from his military training. "That thing is going to explode." Kite heard the warning, but did not stop. Could not stop. He had transcended the boundaries between soldier and weapon, becoming something that existed purely to destroy whatever stood before it. The final target that materialized was not from any historical database. It was a theoretical construct, the ultimate warrior that galactic military planners used as a benchmark for impossible scenarios. It possessed every advantage: speed, intelligence, defensive systems, and firepower that exceeded anything in the known galaxy. It was unbeatable by definition. Kite looked at it with eyes that had seen things die on a dozen different worlds, under alien suns. He saw its weak points, not in its design because it had been created without any, but in its existence. Everything that could be created could be destroyed. The universe was not interested in perfection. He raised the disintegrating weapon one last time and did something that the luminary would spend decades trying to understand. He fired through the target, not at it, but through it, using the target itself as a focusing element for energies that no single weapon should have been able to generate. The ultimate theoretical warrior became part of the beam that destroyed it. Its own perfection turned against itself. When the light faded, the target was gone, and so was most of the reinforced target stand behind it. Kite lowered the weapon, which was now barely recognizable as technology, rather than abstract art made of glowing metal and crystal. He stood in a cloud of steam and smoke, his uniform singed and his gray hair wild, but his brown eyes were calm. The range fell absolutely silent. The smoke began to clear, revealing the full extent of what had happened. Where the reinforced target stand had once been, there was now a perfectly circular hole that went completely through the meter-thick composite material. The edges glowed, faintly red from the heat of whatever had passed through them. Kite set the remains of the X9 Stellar Devastator carefully on its stand. The weapon no longer resembled the elegant piece of technology it had been minutes before. Its crystalline components had melted into abstract sculptures of twisted light. The metal housing was warped and blackened, still radiating heat like a forge. The biosensors that had struggled to interface with his human nervous system had long since burned out, leaving only empty sockets where once there had been sophisticated alien technology. His hands were shaking again. The brief return to his combat prime had taken its toll on his aging body. Sweat beaded his forehead, and his breathing came in short gasps, but his brown eyes held a satisfaction that came from a job well done. The crowd of alien spectators remained, frozen in stunned silence. Several had their mouths open in expressions of shock that transcended species barriers. Others held recording devices that had captured something they were still struggling to process. Veltar stared at the destroyed target stand with an expression that cycled through disbelief, awe, and something that might have been fear. His perpetual smile had vanished completely, replaced by the look of someone whose fundamental assumptions about the universe had just been proven wrong. "The weapon," he said in a voice barely above a whisper. "It was not designed to do that. The plasma chamber should have exploded. The containment field should have collapsed. The neural interface should have rejected your biological patterns entirely." Kite looked at the Luminari instructor with those deep eyes that had seen too much. When he spoke, his voice was gravelly from exertion but steady. "Son, I have been making weapons do things they were not designed for since before your species learned to put on those fake smiles." The comment hit its target more precisely than any plasma bolt. Several of the Luminari cadets shifted uncomfortably, suddenly aware of how artificial their constant expressions of superiority must seem to other species. Taehyun, Earth's military attaché, stepped forward from the crowd. His face showed carefully controlled pride as he addressed the assembled aliens. "Honored instructors and cadets," he said formally, "may I present one of humanity's most valuable resources, experience earned in the crucible of actual combat." "But how?" Dawn asked, her voice filled with genuine confusion. The targeting computer was not functioning. The neural interface was incompatible. The weapon's specifications should have made accurate fire nearly impossible for a human physiology. Kite retrieved his walking stick from where it had fallen and leaned on it heavily. The transformation back to a frail old man was almost complete, but not quite. Something had changed in how he carried himself, as if the demonstration had reminded him of who he really was beneath the gray hair and wrinkled skin. "Young lady," he said to Dawn, "you have been taught that the weapon does the fighting, that all you need to do is point it in the right direction and let the computers handle the details." He gestured toward the melted remains of the X-9. "But what happens when the computers fail? When the targeting system goes down, or the neural interface does not work, or you are handed a weapon you have never seen before in the middle of a fight?" Dawn had no answer. None of the alien cadets did. Their entire military doctrine was built around the assumption that their technology would always function perfectly. "That is the difference between training and experience," Kite continued. "Training teaches you how to use a specific tool in a specific way. Experience teaches you how to use any tool in whatever way gets the job done." So young Park stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her professional restraint. "But the calculations involved in those ricochet shots, the thermal management of the plasma system, the predictive algorithms for target movement. How did you process all that data without computer assistance?" Kite smiled for the first time since entering the range. It was a tired smile, but genuine. "Professor, I did not calculate anything. I just shot where my gut told me to shoot." "That is impossible," Veltar protested. "Combat effectiveness requires precise mathematical modeling of ballistic variables. No biological neural network can process that information quickly enough." "You are right," Kite agreed. "No biological neural network can calculate all those variables quickly enough, but it does not need to. When you have been in enough fights, your body learns to recognize patterns that your mind cannot even name. You stop thinking and start knowing." Hyejin approached him with a mixture of concern and admiration. "How are you feeling? That was quite a performance." Kite chuckled, though it sounded more like a cough. "Like I just remembered why I retired. My body is not built for this anymore." "Perhaps not," Minho Lee observed, "but your mind certainly is. Sir, what you just demonstrated will reshape galactic military thinking for generations." Around them, the alien spectators were beginning to talk among themselves in hushed voices. The implications of what they had witnessed were sinking in. Humanity, the newest species to join the galactic community, possessed capabilities that their most advanced simulations had not predicted. Junwoo Nam approached Ki-Tai with something approaching reverence. "Sir, I have studied your service record, the Battle of Titan Station, the defense of the outer colonies, the classified actions during the First Contact Wars. But seeing you in action is completely different from reading reports." "Those were different times," Kaite replied quietly. "We did what we had to do with what we had. Sometimes that meant pushing equipment past its limits. Sometimes it meant ignoring the manual and trusting your instincts." He looked around at the faces surrounding him, alien and human alike, all trying to process what they had seen. "The galaxy is a dangerous place," he continued, "full of things that want to kill you for reasons you might never understand. When that happens, all the technology in the universe will not save you if you have not learned how to fight with whatever is in your hands." Veltar finally found his voice again. "Colonel Park, I owe you an apology. We invited you here expecting to demonstrate the limitations of human military capabilities. Instead, you have shown us our own limitations." Kite nodded respectfully. "No apology needed, instructor. You were testing me the same way I would test any new recruit. The difference is, I have been tested by things a lot more dangerous than holographic targets." The range's computer system finally spoke up, its artificial voice somehow sounding shaken. "Final combat assessment. All targets eliminated. Accuracy. Rating, 100%. Performance classification, beyond standard parameters." A murmur ran through the crowd. Perfect accuracy was theoretically possible, but had never been achieved on the advanced combat protocols. The fact that it had been done by someone using an incompatible weapon without computer assistance defied every model they had for combat. Effectiveness. "What happens now?" Dayun asked quietly. Tae-hyun. Oh stepped forward again, his diplomatic training taking over. "Now I suspect the Galactic Defense Academy will want to revise some of its training protocols, and the Galactic Council will want to have some very serious discussions about military cooperation with Earth." Ki-Tai began walking slowly toward the exit, his limp more pronounced than before. The brief return to his warrior days had reminded his body of old injuries and older pain. "Where are you going?" Heejin asked, falling into step beside him. "Home," Kite said simply. "I have a garden that needs tending and my grandson is coming to visit next week. He likes to hear stories about the old days." "What will you tell him about today?" Kite paused at the range's exit and looked back at the destroyed target stand, the melted weapon and the crowd of aliens who were still trying to understand what they had witnessed. "I will tell him that sometimes the best way to handle advanced technology is to remember that in the end it is just a tool, and tools are only as good as the person using them." As they left the range, conversations erupted behind them. Alien instructors debated the implications of human combat capabilities. Students questioned everything they had been taught about, the relationship between technology and effectiveness. Military analysts began rewriting threat assessments and tactical doctrines, but Kai-Tae heard none of it. He was already thinking about his garden, his family, and the quiet retirement he had earned through decades of service in humanity's darkest hours. Behind them, maintenance crews began the process of replacing the target stand and trying to understand what had happened to their most advanced weapon. It would take them months to develop theories that came close to explaining what they had witnessed. The old Marine, meanwhile, was already planning what vegetables to plant in the spring. The galaxy had been reminded that while technology could make warriors more effective, it could not replace the warrior himself, and sometimes the most dangerous weapon in the universe was an old soldier who refused to accept that something was impossible. In the weeks that followed, requests would pour in from across the galaxy for human military advisors. The Galactic Council would quietly upgrade Earth's status from emerging civilization